I know I'll never send, when all habitual dalliance will finally end. Then crustiness, my friend and foe, to oblivion you will go, belonging to tomorrow, belonging to tomorrow. Soon I'll make that journey out to Paradise Falls, and on all the stifling lethargy time will now be called. Then Crastinus, the snake-eyed schmo, to Gehenna down you will go, belonging to tomorrow, belonging to tomorrow. Then Crastinus, bringer of woe, to the darkest darkness you will go, belonging to tomorrow, belonging to tomorrow.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this very special edition of Songwriting Simplified over here at Jonny Lipsham Studios, instead of where it'd normally be, which is over at Jonny's channel. I don't know how many of you guys were there on the show last night, but hang on a minute, my mic is deciding to take a drip. Let me see if I can fix this. There we go. I don't know how many of you were there last night on Jonny's show, but he took a bit of a funny turn towards the end of the show and had to actually end the show early and was feeling quite considerably unwell. But he's been to the doctors, he's been to the hospital, he's been and got himself thoroughly checked out. And one of the things that was most recommended really was that he take a night off and have a good rest. So certainly for tonight, Jonny is going to be resting well and taking it easy. And if you're watching, Jonny, we love you. We hope you feel better very soon. And yeah, look after yourself, mate. As you can hear, folks, I am stuffed up with cold. So it's going to be just as entertaining here. But yeah, poor Jonny, not very well. So certainly tonight it's going to be here. I know that we kind of had planned a show for tomorrow afternoon, your time, to do this Stephen Slate. I think it's this Stephen Slate 5 drums and the I forget the name of the sponsor now that Jonny's got for the show as well. And so we're going to do a bit of a giveaway, I think, tomorrow. As it stands, that is still going ahead. But, you know, as things are, you know, the whole situation is still a little bit fluid. So something will happen tomorrow. You'll either be over at Jonny's channel and Jonny and I will be on, or we'll be back here and it'll just be me. I'll let you guys know sometime in the morning, my time, as soon as I've made contact with Jonny again when he's up and about in the morning, and we'll go from there. So just keep an eye on the groups, and somebody will post at some point tomorrow exactly what's going to be happening. It may well be that the whole thing is cancelled. We'll have to see. I'm hoping not. I'm hoping that either one of us can host it. Something like that will happen, hopefully. So, but we'll see. We'll see how the man himself is, and hopefully he'll be feeling a lot better after a good night off. So yes, so the whole situation's still in a state of flux. So just be aware and keep an eye on the groups and that kind of thing. And somebody will post something to the effect of what's going to be happening. A good number of people are here though, which is very, very cool. Let's see, we've got loads of people here. Jammin' Jay's here, Fred is here, JW Embry, Just Bob, Dwight L, Ken Moss, and Bobby Booth is here as well. And RJ Hagler is here. And Fred actually says, health comes first, and I'm sure everyone will understand. Keeping an eye on this will be great. Yeah, so this is a bit of an improvised show, guys. Just Bob says that was quite the scare last night. It certainly was. It was quite alarming to watch. Those of you that saw it, you know, it was quite alarming. But I've over the course of the night last night and into today, I've been in contact with Jonny and with people on the ground who are with him as well. So, yeah, so that's just the scenario. So please do, if you are the praying person, such as I am, please do pray for Jonny. If you're not, then please do have him very much uppermost in your thoughts. I'm sure he'd appreciate it. Okay, so yes, Dooley still says, speaking of Monkey, R.I.P. Peter Tork. Yes, I heard the news today as well, actually, that Peter Tork of the Monkees died. I think died yesterday or today, not really sure which one of those two it is, but yeah. He was one of the founding members of the band. The Monkees were fantastic. I actually really liked them when I was a kid. And we had reruns of their TV show over here in the UK. And I loved watching their show. It was really good. It really it was very entertaining, very amusing, and it was good to see them making music as well on the show. And a lot of people thought, hey, you know, this is just kind of one of these bands that's been thrown together, and maybe they mime everything, and maybe they don't really know how to play their instruments. And the guys in the band had the cojones to actually say, no, we're going to do a show, and you're going to see that we really can play our instruments. We really do know what we're doing. We're not just kind of put together a bunch of actors for the TV show. You know, we're a real band, and they really proved themselves, and you know, pretty much pioneered an entire genre of television, I think, as well as, you know, a style of songwriting and a style of music as well, which I really enjoyed. Lots and lots and lots of humor in their music. So yeah, so R.I.P. Peter Talk. He was 77, and I believe it was cancer that got him in the end. JW says, thank you for doing the show tonight. Yeah, you're very welcome. Bobby says the dentist should have called the ambulance. His blood pressure was that high. Yep, I totally agree. Just Bob says he died yesterday. Rare cancer in his tongue that spread. Yeah, kind of like esophageal cancer, which is also incidentally what killed Walter Becker in 2017. The guitarist and co-songwriter in Steely Dan. And as you may notice, I'm wearing my Steely Dan t-shirts. Hang on, if I just kind of... The mic is obscuring it a bit, but there you go. I'll try and stand up a little bit so you can have a good look. There we go, Steely Dan t-shirt. There you go. I'm sure a few of you have been wanting to see it, so... there you go. Strange fact, Charles Manson auditioned for the Mickey Dolenz part. Really? Interesting. Kirk McRae is here, and he says Peter was a fine musician. He most certainly was a very fine musician. They all were very fine musicians, and you know, typical cynical public. Hang on, I'm all tangled up in my headphone cable. Hang on. There we go. I was actually running over my headphone cable, which is very silly. Alright, so the song that you heard at the beginning there was Belonging to Tomorrow, the title track to my 2016 EP. I played it for no other reason other than I needed some intro music and I needed it fast, and it's just there. It's just dead easy to go to. But there you go. And that song is in 3 different keys. It goes up kind of by semitone, more or less. And it starts kind of in G, then it goes up to A flat, and then it misses out A because there's only 3 verses and goes straight to B flat for the final verse after the weird flugelhorn solo. The idea for the wah-wah pedal and distortion for the flugelhorn wasn't my idea. That was my trumpet player's idea. I actually wanted just a regular, ordinary flugelhorn at that point, and he said, actually, wouldn't it just really serve the what this song is all about and the tension in the song? Wouldn't it just really do it if we do something weird with it? So he ran it through his pedal board. He has like a whole bunch of, he has more pedals on his pedal board than most guitar players do, and he's a trumpet player, and he runs his trumpet through all of this array of stuff. He's got a looper, he's got distortion pedals, he's got overdrive pedals, he's got a wah-wah pedal, he's got a whole bunch of things, he's got delays and everything that he runs his trumpet through. And so he played his flugelhorn through this pedal board of his, and actually I thought it sounded great, so we kept it. And that's all there is to it, really. There was no special reason why it was a distorted flugelhorn solo. It's just one of those things where, you know, somebody has a little brainwave, a creative spark inspired by the song, and that's what came out. And actually it really fits the lyric, and it fits everything so well, because Belonging to Tomorrow is all about battling with procrastination, which is something I genuinely battle with. I put things off, especially things that are important that I don't like to do. I put those things off until they become urgent, and then I panic. And so that's what that song is all about. So let's go and take a look at the chat. Now, like I said, this is a bit of an improvised show, so kind of I'm relying a lot on you guys to help me and to feed me stuff that you want to talk about. So if you've got questions on songwriting, mixing, mastering, recording, the works, please do. Stick them in the chat, or anything you want to talk about. We can certainly do that. This is not really an ordinary Songwriting Simplified show, but let's try and keep it around the whole idea of songwriting. So that can be, we could even talk about arranging techniques, like, you know, if you're going to arrange horns like I have done for this particular song, you know, where do you fit those little phrases in? How do you do it? That kind of stuff. We can talk about that if that's something you want to talk about. Post it in the chat and let me know what you want to talk about, and we can certainly do that. Deer Creek Audios here says, back in the day, it was rumored they had session musicians play their parts. Yeah, that was the rumor, but it was, in fact, not entirely true. It might have been at the very start of the show, but they actually played live shows and proved to their audience that they really did play their instruments and they knew what they were doing. So there you go. Jammin' Jay says, Monkey sold more records than the Beatles and the Rolling Stones put together. Back in the day, the TV show boosted their fan base. Nice to hear you watch them across the pond. Yeah, we certainly did. And they were actually really popular over here. Really popular. You know, that show had several reruns over the span of, I think, about 25 years. It would be on one channel or other here in the UK. And occasionally, now that we have satellite TV here, like we have done for the last sort of 20 years or so, 25 years maybe, so, yeah, maybe 25 years of having satellite TV in the UK and cable and that kind of stuff. You know, those kind of shows keep coming up on various channels, so that's pretty cool, I think. And it's good to see, you know, that they're still popular. Let's see what else we got. Martin says, I must have missed whatever you said about the whole Group Monkey sponsorship. Is that on hold or did I miss something? It's not on hold. No, but we were supposed to be doing that. The first of those shows, that was actually supposed to happen tonight, I think. But of course, the condition that Johnny's in, basically, we were going on Saturday. The plan was we were going to do this whole thing on Friday tonight, and then we were going to do a Songwriting Simplified on Saturday, which I couldn't do on Wednesday because I was at the Steely Dan show. So so that kind of Group Monkey thing was meant to happen tonight, but our plan now is for that to happen tomorrow, hopefully, providing Johnny is in good health. I'm not going to let him do the show if he's not in good health, because it would be bad for him if we did. So there we go. So that's what that is there. So I hope I've made that clear. Dwight L says, I heard distortion and reverb on a violin solo and it was awesome. Yeah, a friend of mine plays violin through a similar sort of array of guitar pedals that my trumpet playing friend Luke plays. And it does sound epic. A violin played through a distortion pedal, you can make a violin sound like Hendrix. Really, it sounds awesome. In good hands, anyway, it certainly does. Yes, I have the Steely Dan t-shirt. Yep, I certainly do. I have several Steely Dan t-shirts, actually, but a lot of them are quite old. I think my first one dates back to the 1996 Art Crimes tour. That is, it's unwearable now, pretty much. And then the next one that's vaguely wearable is my Two Against Nature tour t-shirts from their 2000 tour. And I missed out on 2009 when they came here. I think they came here in 2006, and I couldn't get to see them because I was working. I was playing a gig myself. Typical. And then the next time they were here, they actually came to my hometown here. They came to Edinburgh for their very first show in Edinburgh, and it sold out in 30 minutes flat. I could not get in, and I was most annoyed because it would have meant I could just get the bus into town, go see the show, get the bus back home. It would have been fantastic. But sadly not. So Wednesday I had to go through all the way across to the other side of Scotland to go to Glasgow to go and see them at the SSE Hydro Arena in Glasgow, and it was fantastic. It was a great show. Let's hope it doesn't interfere with the rugby. Yeah, absolutely. I believe it's Scotland, Italy this weekend. And I think that's right. I think it's Scotland, Italy. And I think we're away in Rome, if memory serves. and so should be a good matchup there. We should beat the Italians, and we are currently, I think we're near the top of the table in the Six Nations, I think. Those of you that are American will probably have no idea what I'm talking about, but yes, I'm a rugby fanatic, for those of you that are interested. Did you buy your ticket last September when sales started? Yes, I bought them as, actually I got them pre-release, because I am a long time member of the Steely Dan forum and the Steely Dan newsletter, and so because of that we get pre-release. Those of us that are on the newsletter, we get pre-release tickets, and that's how I got mine. Pretty much as soon as they were available to Steely Dan newsletter members. Fred says, everyone please hit the like button for JL. It's very kind of him to help out JG with what he does. Thank you for that. Well, you're very kind, Fred. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Sergeant Music is here. He says, sorry I'm late. I had no idea that I was on. That's okay. It was kind of very last minute, actually. We were not really sure whether Jonny was going to actually do the show tonight or not. I had a long talk with him, and we, it was actually quite late by the time he got out of the doctor's anyway, and was able to get back home. And so I had quite a long talk with him, and he's all right. He's hanging in there. He's in a reasonable amount of discomfort still, but we're monitoring him pretty closely, and so it's just the obvious thing really for me was to sit in for him tonight. So there you go. And yes, I have a cold, so that's why my voice is down an octave tonight. RJ says, everybody's got something to hide except for me and Groove Monkey. Kirk says, something a successful music producer once told me when I was a young lad: when recording or songwriting, always pay close attention to the 5 T's: tuning, timing, tempo, tonality, and texture. And that is extremely sound advice. That is extremely sound advice. And I would also say pay attention to the first 5 seconds and the last 5 seconds of your song. That's really where the big money is. If you want to engage your listener and keep them engaged all the way through the song, the first 5 seconds of your song have to be outstanding. They have to be very, very attention-grabbing. And then the next challenge is to hold and maintain their attention all the way through to the end. Because if you make those last 5 seconds as solid and as good as those first 5 seconds, you'll encourage the listener to listen again to the song. And the more they listen, the more they find stuff in the song. So, and details that maybe missed the first listen through, like a little horn motif, or a flute obbligato, or something like that, or a particular guitar lead guitar line that just pops through in just like verse 2, in like the 3rd line of verse 2. It's just like a little counter melody to the lead vocal, and it's just there just that one time. Those kind of little details dotted throughout the song and a superb first and last 5 seconds will really help your songs have a tremendous amount of impact. But yes, the 5 T's are absolutely crucial. And the thing is, by paying attention to those 5 things and paying attention to getting the best quality recordings you can get, so investing the most amount of time in the writing and arranging phase, and then the second most amount of time in the recording phase, the thing that you do by doing that is that you then make the next phase, the mixing phase, a lot easier. A lot easier. And then of course mastering is a doddle after that. If those things have had the most attention and the most time devoted to them, by the time you get to the mixing and then the mastering phase, you've got yourself a belter of a song, an absolute belter of a song. So don't scrimp on the amount of time you invest in the writing of the song and then the arranging of the song. Arranging of your song is so crucial. It can make or break your song. Your song can be either very, very boring because there's not enough to it. There's not enough going on in the song. You might have a really, really great lyric. You might have a really, really great melody. And you might have a really, really nice set of chord changes. But if the arranging is lackluster, you kill the song. You kill the song. You can make a very, very great song very, very bad that nobody pays any attention to or pays any heed to. So arranging the song is second most to writing the song. In actual fact, quite often, certainly for me, I find that the two go together hand in glove. So kind of like my writing, what I call my writing phase is, I write the song, I write the lyrics, I come up with the chord changes, I come up with the groove, ideas at that point. And then the next thing, and it almost happens at the same time, is arranging the song. So, that would be things like incidental stuff, like texture stuff, like a horn section or strings, or sometimes even a full-blown orchestra in the case of my song I did earlier last year for my December 10th challenge, which was called Faces and Places. I originally did not intend that song to have an orchestra on it, but it ended up having an orchestra on it. And the reason why was because most of the arrangement of the song was not really maybe the best, shall we say. It had nice chord changes. In fact, it had a key change. My verses were in A and my chorus was in E flat, which of course is like this, this nice awkward augmented fourth or diminished fifth, depending upon your outlook on life, interval. So kind of like, my verses were kind of, kind of all based around there, and then it suddenly leaps into, and it's in a completely different key altogether. So that was an arranging trick all of its own, is having the chorus in a different key, because it added some extra brightness to the chorus. That's always a good little thing to do, and you don't have to do a big leap like I did. I'm just weird like that. But certainly maybe if your verse is in A, maybe consider just going up a tone to the key of B for your chorus. Because it adds some extra excitement. And this is again where quite often what you find is great arrangers, when they get hired by record companies to do, kind of like an extra layer of stuff on top of a song, what they'll quite often do is like very high strings in the chorus that move like very slowly compared to the melody. So if the melody is kind of going, let's say that's your melody in your chorus, just for example, I just kind of note bashed something that just popped into my head, then, quite often you'll have high strings doing something like this. Kind of going a lot slower than the melody. And there's a good reason for that. A, it provides counter melody. B, high strings have an emotional quality to them, psychologically, that brings an extra emotional layer out of your lyrics, and they have this psychological effect upon the listener that means that they are sucked into and drawn into your song a lot more than if that wasn't there. So high strings in the chorus can be extremely effective. Little arranging device. And I don't know why I'm talking about arranging devices, but it's a good point. Deer Creek says, how would... that just suddenly disappeared on me. That's not very helpful. I'm going to go find that. Just as I was reading it. I hate it when that happens. How do you differentiate arranging versus production nowadays? Well, a lot of great arrangers also are producers. Quincy Jones is a fantastic example of an arranger who has made a fantastic career as a producer. Producers tend to have oversight over how a whole song comes together. So he would oversee all the phases of development of the song. Certainly from when the artist comes into the studio and they're ready to record the song. Usually the song would be fairly arranged by the time that you go into the studio, and the band should be very well rehearsed. Everybody should know what they're doing. And then the producer's role, it depends. I mean, sometimes the producer's role can be very passive, but if the producer's role is active and the artist really kind of has a good relationship with their producer and allows them creative access, creative input, then the producer's role can certainly be helping the artist to shape and form how the final product is going to sound. You know, is this going to sound bright and dramatic, or is this going to sound dark and somber? Or, you know, are we going to have an orchestra versus a big band? You know, those are production decisions, but in order for those, you know, let's say, you know, that whole thing, orchestra or big band, that's a production decision. How do we want this song to be framed? How do we want it to sound? Now, given that, you need a different arranger for each of those scenarios. Now, sometimes you have some very, very, very talented arrangers who can arrange for an orchestra, but can also arrange for a big band. Not everybody can do both. Some people can. Quincy Jones, again, is somebody that I point to as somebody that can write for both. Lalo Schifrin, who has written a lot of film music, great American film composer, writes a lot in a kind of jazz orientated manner. So I think he did at least one James Bond film, I'm pretty sure. But what was I going to say? He's one of those guys who can certainly arrange for an orchestra and for a big band. But you might not have that kind of access to somebody that can do both. But once you've decided, hey, we're going to go with a big band, then you need to find somebody that can arrange for a big band, who can write charts for, you know, saxophones, trumpets, trombones, clarinets if you need them, as well as rhythm section. So, and, you know, there are demands on each of the writing for each of those sections that a good arranger needs to be aware of, and also making sure that it's stylistically appropriate for a big band. Now, big bands can play funk, big bands can play rock, big bands can play straight ahead 1945 to 1951 bebop. I've heard big bands, and I've played in big bands that have done all of that. So arranging and production, although they go hand in hand, and some great arrangers make great producers, you do get some great producers that aren't particularly great arrangers, and they will hire somebody to come in and write charts for musicians. or who will, who will do that kind of stuff. In Steely Dan's case, a lot of their arrangements, certainly latterly, of their sort of kind of their 70s, their 1971 to 1980 period, their early arrangements, they kind of wrote themselves, and they didn't have anybody come in, but they still had a lot of session musicians. Gary Katz was their producer, and Gary had a lot of input into kind of, okay, which session musician should we hire to play on which song? Who's going to be appropriate for this song? And quite often, Donald and Walter would know, they'd have a really clear idea, no, this is not happening with this musician, we'll get another guitar player in and they can have a shot at this. Or Gary Katz himself would have input and say, hey, this guy would be perfect for this song. But latterly, when they got to great records like The Royal Scam and Asia and Gaucho, Larry Carlton, the great session guitar player, who has taught a lot of the great guitar players in the business, people like Steve Lukather, students of Larry's. Larry would write the arrangements. He would write the charts for the musicians on tracking day for Steely Dan. That was one of the things he did. So a lot of if you are a Steely Dan fan and you happen to have a copy of the Asia album, put that record on and listen to those arrangements, and some of the attention to detail stuff, like arpeggios and that kind of stuff in the Fender Rhodes and the piano, the acoustic piano, and how those contribute to the song, particularly the title track of the song. There are texture things that go on there that were things that Larry brought to the table. Things like having xylophone, marimba, stuff like that, is part and parcel of how that song came together. That's Larry Carlton. Great guitar player, great arranger. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question in a roundabout kind of way. Texture stuff like a distorted flugelhorn. Yes, exactly right, Kirk. It's a surprising texture, isn't it? You're not expecting that to come in at that point. Just Bob says, what if your style is mostly guitar-driven music, acoustic/electric, and you don't think in terms of orchestral arrangements? How do you spruce it up and make it interesting? You can stack guitars. You can stack guitar parts. I mean, again, going back to Steely Dan, the Asia song has about 9 or 10 guitars stacked together, mostly because their voicings were so hard to play on guitar. You couldn't really have one guitar player play it because the voicings were either too close or too wide that you couldn't reach. So what they had several guitar, I think maybe Walter and Larry between them, and maybe Dean Parks as well, would basically layer harmony parts together, and they essentially made like a guitar choir or something like that. I think maybe you could describe it as a guitar choir, something like that. Anyway, and that's how they created that guitar sound for that song in particular. So that is definitely something you can do to spruce up your tracks, is stack some guitar harmonies together. Good counter melodies, very important. Another arranging device is a good counter melody. What is a counter melody? A counter melody is basically like a secondary melody that complements your main vocal melody, but never gets in the way of it. It never gets in the way of it. It never tries to overwhelm the lead vocal at any time, but it is there in a supporting role, and it just provides an extra melodic layer. So those can be very, very useful, and you can interchange between a clean electric and a distorted electric, or even bringing in maybe a nylon strung acoustic guitar to why not? If you've got like a heavy rock song with lots of very overdriven guitars, why not bring in some nylon strung acoustic guitars to provide a completely different texture, a completely different sound altogether, that might be quite surprising. The listener's not expecting it, and then suddenly it's there. And they go, oh, hang on, acoustic guitars? Classical guitars? What? So, those are little ideas that you can try to apply there. Deer Creek says A to E flat modulating minor thirds. It's kind of common. Yeah, except A to E flat is not a minor third. It's an augmented fourth, which is definitely not commonplace for a variety of reasons. Mostly because it's hard to pitch. When you're the vocalist and you're trying to sing, that interval, it's fairly tricky. There are some examples of melodies that have deliberately made use of that augmented fourth. One that springs to mind is the song Maria from West Side Story, which actually specifically has that interval right at the outset. Let's see if I can find it. So there it is there. So melodically, it's not uncommon. It's unusual, but it's not uncommon. But to have a song where the two key centers are that interval apart is certainly not commonplace in popular music. But certainly going from C major to E flat is commonplace though. Because it's not far away. It is only a minor third. It's still relatively relative. So, that's definitely something that does work. But going from C major to G flat, So, no, not entirely commonplace. Mostly, again, because it's hard to pitch. So let's see. I still don't see a scroll made of parchment. I'm not sure what that's all about. Just above unexpected chords and key changes. Yeah, okay. Let's go down a little bit and see if I've missed anything. Diminished modulation, says Deer Creek. Okay, wow. What's going on here? Mike is here. He says, what's up, JL? Why are you on tonight? I am on tonight because Jonny isn't. Last night, Jonny was taken ill during his show. You can, if he's still got that show up on his channel, by all means, go and watch it, and then you can kind of see what happened. So yeah, so that's why I'm here. I am replacing Jonny tonight. Phil Spector made a career of overproduction, says RJ Hegler. Absolutely. He was famous for something called the Wall of Sound, which was ridiculously over the top. He added like a huge orchestra and a choir to one of the Beatles' more simple songs I believe for the White Album, one of the songs. And the guys in the band hated it, and as soon as they could, they did a reissue, I think it was, and where they got rid of the orchestra, they got rid of the choir, they got rid of all of that Phil Spector nonsense with the massive plate reverbs and spring reverbs over the top, and they just stripped it back just to the four of them, and it worked much better, in my opinion. So yeah, you can overdo it for certain. If you've got a nice simple little song that's quite intimate, don't give it an orchestral background. Likewise, not necessarily a good idea to turn a nice, intimate, you know, slow foxtrot style ballad into a big sort of high-kicking, singing, dancing, big band number. Probably not a good idea. So use your judgment and use your sense of taste as to what's going to be appropriate for your song. And, you know, quite often what I will do is I will do too much and then I will redact. That's another approach you can take. Start off with chucking everything in the kitchen sink at it and then going, okay, this is all too much. That's going to go, that's going to go, that's going to go, whoops, that's going to go, that's going to go, that's going to go. And then you end up with exactly what exactly what you want in the end. And that may well be that you've got rid of a whole orchestral arrangement that you spent hours doing. Well, that's okay. Even if you did spend hours doing that, you know what? That is not hours wasted. It's hours spent working on an orchestral arrangement where you probably learned some orchestral arranging techniques and you never realized it, which you can take forward into your next song. Or, you know, when you find a song that is appropriate for that kind of writing, you can go, aha, I have done this before. So nothing is ever wasted. And Brian Wilson, I think, is talking about wow, chat is jumping like a kangaroo in the mating season right here. Deer Creek says, I guess asking the keyboardist to play the entertainer is analogous to Smoke on the Water. Possibly not though, but maybe. I'm going to try and catch some more of your questions. Can I play the song The Entertainer? No. Sorry, Jammin' J, but no. It's not my thing at all. Bob Powell is on his way to a gig. Have a good one, Bob. Mike says auto-tune and time aligning is the problem. They took the human element out of the music. I would agree in some respects. I would agree with that. Auto-tune is something that can be massively overused and overdone. You know, the whole, what they call the T-Pain effect. I'm not a fan of the T-Pain effect or the Cher effect or anything like that. You can overdo it for certain, but you can also use it creatively to create maybe a harmony part that you hadn't thought of. You can use Melodyne to do that. Another thing you can do is you can use Melodyne to spot fix notes that are just a little bit out. Nobody sings perfectly. Nobody sings every single note right in the middle. Nobody does that. You know, not even Tony Bennett did that, or Frank Sinatra did that. Frank Sinatra quite often would sing, you know, a hair flat. But he got away with it because it actually became a little bit of a part of his relaxed style of singing, which actually had a lot of influence on people like Bill Withers, for example. But, you know, you can spot fix those kind of things. That's appropriate use of auto-tuning software, in my opinion. And as it goes with quantizing, time aligning, you certainly can overdo it to the point where everything sounds mechanical. I don't do that. When I'm quantizing, if I quantize anything at all, it's just to tidy things up just a little bit. So if something is just a little bit sloppy, the way it was performed, but it's got some great character, and the performance is otherwise, I like it, but maybe that drum fill is just a little bit on the loose side, that's fine. I will tighten that up so it's not quite so loose. But I will try and retain as much of the original human intent as possible. But you're right, you can absolutely totally overdo it. Let's see what else we got. Jamie J says you're also wearing a black t-shirt. Yeah, I'm wearing a Steely Dan shirt that I got on Wednesday. Let's go and look through the chat. Let's see what we got. Triads are home base, comfort zone light 4/4 meter. Yeah, nothing wrong with triads at all. Yeah, nothing wrong with triads at all. Triads are good. They are the primary colors of music. Absolutely. And they form the bare basic bones of harmony in music. You know, Mozart, Handel, Bach, they all relied upon them, but they also all extended them. A lot of harmonic developments in classical music can be attributed to Johann Sebastian Bach, George Frederick Handel, and of course Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and of course latterly Beethoven developed harmonic concepts of his own that took classical music into the Romantic period of the 19th century, which of course extended the harmonic palette of orchestral music again even further. And then of course you get into the early 20th century when you have people like Debussy and Ravel, who started playing around with extended harmonies beyond the octave, things like ninths and 11ths and 13ths, which is kind of what we would now associate with jazz harmony. People like Debussy and Ravel were kind of prefiguring that in their own music, and that had an impact upon jazz musicians, early jazz musicians in the 19-teens, sort of like the 1910, 1911, 1912 period. Buddy Bolden in particular, the trumpet player who, all written accounts say he was a genius, but sadly there's no recordings of his because he never recorded, sadly. But he had a massive influence upon Louis Armstrong. And certainly Armstrong himself attributed a lot of his harmonic ideas to Buddy Bolden, and Buddy Bolden attributed a lot of his harmonic ideas to Ravel and Debussy in particular. So there you go. And 4/4 is, of course, everybody can count to 4. But there is music beyond 4/4. There's great music to be listened to in 5, like Take 5 by Dave Brubeck, for example. Or, there's plenty of stuff in 7 and 9 and 11 and beyond. I have played in a lot of different time signatures in my time, to a point where actually at one point I was playing in odd meters so much that I almost forgot how to play in 4. I know it sounds weird, but I did. I was regularly playing in 7/8 and alternating that with 5/8. Though I was playing on a few records where, it would be a bar of 5, then a bar of 7, then a bar of 5, then a bar of 7, then a bar of 6, then a bar of 5, then a bar of 7. And, that's kind of just how the music went. That I completely forgot how to play ding da ding da ding ding da ding da da ding ding da standard 4/4 kind of stuff. Because I was so used to playing ding da ding da ding da ding ding da ding da ding da ding da ding da and all that kind of stuff, which is all weird and in odd times. So there you go. Any other questions? Oh, Deer Creek says polyphonic triads. Polyphonic triads? You mean triads stacked? Yeah, triads stacked are fun as well. Like take a C major triad and then superimpose a D major on top of it. That always sounds nice, which is kind of like a C major. There's kind of like a C major 6 with a 9 and sharp 11. But all it is C major, D major. Put those two together. And if you've got big hands like I have, you can stretch up to the major 7th at the top there. So you can stretch and get that B natural at the top. You get a nice sort of C major 7, add 9, sharp 11 kind of thing. So, and you know, just by playing 2 triads together, you're into jazz harmony, just like that. Very, very simple. 5/8. Yeah, 5/8 is a nice little time signature as well. Jerry Goldsmith made the alien chord by stacking minor 7ths. Very different sounding. Yeah, minor 7ths. Yeah, you can do that. So, let's see. So that kind of has like a C minor. There's your C minor 7 with B flat minor on top. And you're right, does sound a little bit different, a bit unusual. Just Bob says, are there any jazz or fusion jazz players that play mostly dissonant chords and notation in their music as a standard way of playing? If so, who can I look into? Just Bob, I have the perfect guitar player, because I think you're a guitar player, aren't you? I have the perfect guitar player for you to get into, and his name is Alan Holdsworth. Sadly no longer with us, died I think last year. And it's A-L-L-A-N Holdsworth, Alan Holdsworth, who was a bona fide genius. He came from a little town, a little small village in West Yorkshire, down the road in England, in the UK, and made his name, I think, in a band called Soft Machine, and then in another band called UK, and from there he made his way to the United States, to Los Angeles in particular, and had a fairly glittering solo career. Let me try and think of a record you could really get into of his. There are 2. One is called Secrets, and Secrets features Vinnie Colaiuta on drums and Jimmy Haslip, I think it is, on bass. There's another record called The 16 Men of Tain, T-A-I-N, 16 Men of Tain. It's another good record, which features Gary Novak on drums, and the bass player is, what's his name? Darn it. What the heck is his name? Dave Carpenter. That's it, Dave Carpenter. Dave Carpenter died in 2008, I think. He was not old. He was only like 51, 52, I think. But what a tremendous bass player. Played 6-string electric bass, and he played upright as well, but he made 6-string electric bass his thing. And what he would do, because the Alan Holdsworth band is essentially a trio, so you have drums, bass, and guitar. When Alan was taking his solos, he would accompany by playing, he would thumb a bass line with his thumb, and then he would chord voice. So he was playing it like a classical guitar, essentially. And he'd just like be playing this bass line with his thumb, and then occasionally voicing a chord with triple stopping and that kind of thing, and you know, plucking the 3 strings or 4 strings together at the same time. And you'd totally swear when you would see him either live or on video, and I've seen him both ways, you'd swear that there was a keyboard player in the band, but there isn't. There never was. But I would say that Alan Holdsworth's best band was the one where he had Gary Novak on drums and Dave Carpenter on bass. The 3 of them just had a unique sound and a chemistry that I don't think any of his previous bands had. So I would definitely check out him. Thelonious Monk is cool. Yeah, Thelonious Monk taught me everything I know about piano playing. To be honest, I love Thelonious Monk. Deer Creek is advocating Pat Metheny, and I would agree with that. Pat Metheny is a wonderful guitar player because not only is he a fusion guy and a jazz guy, but he has a gorgeous sense of melody when he improvises. He doesn't just play lots of chops, fast legato stuff. He plays beautiful melodies, beautiful improvised melody lines that tell a story. And Pat worked with Michael Brecker a lot. They were very, very close friends, so they appeared on each other's records and they played on each other's tours practically all the time. Pat Metheny's, I think I've seen Pat once at the London Jazz Festival a few years ago, and he had Antonio Sanchez on drums, and his bass player was Christian McBride, I think it was. Yes, Christian McBride. Just the three of them, and they totally filled out that stage with sound. Christian McBride playing upright bass, and it sounded fantastic because he has such a big, huge upright bass sound, and such a huge harmonic palette that he can really stretch out his lines to suggest other chord voicings and that kind of stuff on the bass, and it just sounded fantastic. So yeah, Pat is another great guitar player you can get into, and so that might be a surprise to you that I know a lot of really great guitar players you can get into, considering I'm really only a fake guitar player. I can play a little bit, but I would love to be able to play like Pat Metheny, but no, I don't really understand how, an instrument with more than 4 strings works. So there you go. Let's see. Deer Creek says, I took a couple of lessons from Pat M back in the Bright Sized Life days. Same hairdo and striped shirt. Haha, awesome. That's very cool. That's a good little claim to fame. John McLaughlin, Mahavish, New Orchestra. Yeah, John is a great guitar player as well. He's another good one to check out. And of course, Frank Zappa. If you're gonna get into jazz fusion, look no further than Frank Zappa, to be honest. And a very, very young 17-year-old Vinnie Colaiuta featured on drums with Frank, along with Don Grolnick, the keyboard player, Will Lee, the bass player, Michael and Randy Brecker in the horn section, along with a trombone player whose name escapes me right now, Barry Rogers. Barry Rogers, great trombonist, great arranger as well. Deer Creek says, Pat Metheny's on a level of improvisation that you wouldn't believe when you see it on paper. Too intense. Pretty much every note is for a reason. Yes, he has a wonderful, glorious sense of melody. I can totally see why Mike Brecker chose him as a kind of partner for his records. Like some of Mike's records from the 1990s. I'm particularly thinking of a record called Tales of the Hudson, I think it's called. I think that's what it's called. The only harmonic instrument that's in the band is Pat. So Pat's playing a lot of chord voicings, but he improvises beautifully, especially when there's no piano or anything like that in the band. On a few of the tracks there's just no piano at all, and it's just literally in the improvised section it's piano, bass and drums, and it's almost like group improvisation, to be honest. They kind of take the tunes in very different and interesting directions, and Pat is a fantastic improviser. Let's see, we're coming towards the end of the show, folks, but I know Johnny likes to run over a little bit on a Friday, so I'm going to do the same in honor of him. So I'll stick around for a bit if you guys are up for it. Oh, Captain Beefheart. Just Bob talks about Captain Beefheart. Captain Beefheart was hilarious. I loved his songs. So funny, so entertaining. The music really was very, very amusing and entertaining. I don't even know how many people are here. How many people are here today? I should have asked this right at the start of the show, but, you know, here we are in, like, 10 minutes past 1 in the morning, and I don't even know how many people are here. Please post in the chat how many people are here. Somebody, please. How many people viewing? And it's not 6,000. 19 just now. Okay, yes. So we're a little low on numbers. Cosmic J says I'm not here. Well, that's good to know that you're not here. I hope you're in a pub somewhere. There were 30 and there's now 19. Okay, that's cool. All right, so we will wrap this up very, very shortly. So I'll maybe take one, maybe two more questions tops, if you've got them. We seem to be talking quite a lot tonight about arranging in particular and improvisation. Dooley still says, who's that piano player that would improvise on recordings solo, like 30+ minute, kind of pre-Chick career? You're probably talking about Keith Jarrett. Keith Jarrett was a huge influence on Chick when Chick was younger. And yes, Keith actually recorded, I think, 3 albums, which is just entirely improvised piano works. And I think you're right. I think like the pieces are like 10, 15, 20 minutes long, and there's like maybe 3 of them on each of the records. And he basically just walked into the studio, they mic'd up the piano, and he sat down and he just started to play, and they captured it all on tape. And the beautiful thing about those records is that Keith had this way of being able to develop melodic ideas and develop them in a huge way, not just kind of extending the melodic idea, but kind of then supporting that with maybe reharmonizing. So he might have like a simple motif with a particular harmonic support, but then he would develop that idea and he would expand the harmonic palette that supports that extended melody. And he knew how to beautifully juxtapose melody with dissonance, melody with consonance, darkness and light. And that was really Keith's style. Keith was a very emotional player. I love Keith Jarrett's music. Still do, and I believe he's still going. But I think that's who you're talking about. Al De Miola with Paco de Luca, yeah, and it's called Elegant Gypsy, yes, and I believe at least I think Jaco Pastorius covered that tune as well. Cosmic says, I met Chick Corea, really nice guy. Yes, I have met him as well. I met him at Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club in London many years ago. Yes, Keith Jarrett, great piano player. All right, folks, I think we are going to call it there because we are now at 1:15 in the morning and I have a very busy day. My week this week has totally gone to the dogs. I had a plan, and that plan has totally gone south. So I'm going to announce what is coming up next this week for me, for Jonny Lipsham Studios. I'm going to be starting, I think I mentioned this on my show last week, but just in case you hadn't heard, I'm going to be starting a mixing series, which I haven't really got a title for yet. At the moment, it's kind of a little bit unimaginatively called Mixing with Jonny Lipsham, which is probably a really bad name for a series. But we're going to be taking my song Paper Deity, and we're going to, which of course I mixed and mastered in 2016 for the record, but I have not really touched that song since. So I thought it might be quite interesting to mix it again as fresh, as brand new. So I've zeroed out the whole song, and my idea is to make stems available so that you guys can mix it yourselves as well. Now, here's the caveat. If you're going to download the stems from the secret downloadable place that I'm going to link you to in episode 1 of the series, you may use it in your personal portfolio. I have no problem with that, on one condition, and that is that you need to credit me, Jonny Lipsham, as the artist and refer back to the fact that Paper Deity comes from my Belonging to Tomorrow EP, and you'll need to link to that EP. If you do that, you can absolutely use it in your portfolio to attract clients. I have no problem with that. So yes, that will be starting this week. Episode 1 will be going up this week, and it's going to be really, really cool. I've not listened to the song in quite a while, so mixing it with fresh ears is going to be fun. And of course, you know, it's like 3 years since I mixed that song, so I've done a lot of mixing in those intervening 3 years. So I don't know. I think maybe I might well approach this in a fresh way, and maybe a different way than I would have 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I basically mixed that whole EP just using the Pro EQ, the compressor, and the analog delay and the room reverb, and that was it. So just basically 4 plugins to mix the entire EP, which was the challenge I set myself at that time. So this time I'm going to mix, and I'm going to use maybe a few different other plugins, like maybe my Waves SSL channel strips, and they will probably feature quite heavily. And certainly the new additions to the Fat channel I'm going to make use of. And let's see, you know, how it goes. And you'll also get to have a bit of an insight into how I actually mix, because I don't think I've really made that particularly necessarily common knowledge. You've not maybe seen exactly how I approach a mix. So if that's of interest to you, because I do have, it's not a unique methodology by any stretch of the imagination, but it's certainly my methodology. And if you're interested in my methodology and how I do it, then by all means watch the series, and hopefully you'll find something useful and something helpful will come out of it. You know, you can mix along with me at the same time using the stems. So if you're up for that, folks, the first of those videos will be going up on Thursday this coming week, and then they will be each successive episode will go up on successive Thursdays. That's the plan anyway. And I plan to make each video maybe 15 or so minutes long, so that, you know, I don't want to make them too long, because, you know, I don't want to lose people. I don't want to lose people's attention. And I want to give people, you know, quick things that they can do that week on their mix, or, you know, things that you can apply on that particular part of the mix for that week. And yeah, so that's kind of what I was thinking about. So if you're up for that, then please do drop me an email at johnny@jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk and let me know if you are in on that or not. Hopefully you are. And if you are in, then drop me an email, and that would help me so that I know roughly how many people are up for this and whether it's actually worth me doing it. Okay, and on that note, folks, I am going to say thank you very, very much. Oh, Steve Ross is here. Yeah, we're just about to close up the show, I'm afraid, my friend. But yeah, Steve Ross, please do drop me a Facebook message. I think we're Facebook friends. I think we are. Drop me a Facebook message, mate. Yeah, it'd be good to have a good chat. That'd be cool. And yes, I'm filling in for Johnny Guy. Johnny was taken ill towards the end of his show yesterday, and he's okay. He's fine. He just took a bit of a nasty turn, and so, you know, doctors have recommended rest for him. So yeah. So that's kind of the story, and hopefully Johnny will be back tomorrow afternoon for you guys. in the Central Daylight area. And I think I will be joining him if the show is going to go ahead. But, you know, stay tuned, keep an eye on the groups, and we will post up what's going to be happening tomorrow. Okay? So until then, please do drop me an email if you are interested in this idea of mixing Paper Deity. I think it'd be pretty cool. And hopefully you'll get some value out of it. And as I say, you can get the stems and you can mix it yourself as well. Okay, so with that in mind, folks, I'm going to say a very good night. See you tomorrow.
Shimmering, turning darkest night to daylight. The rain so street, sparkling. Neon lights dance to the burning flights. Those basement joints are bouncing, trading fours right up till sunrise. Rhythm changes and Cherokee. The table candles flicker in your eyes. This is where I long to be. This is what I dream. I'm gonna be just blowing some saxophone, grooving hard in some neon-lit bar, ain't never thinking of home. Gonna be a jester, flying high. Checking out the redhead, her lush lips smile and pale green eyes. Under the lights I'm glowing, the greatest chorus ever improvised. After the show we'll make out, digging discs down at the famous store, and then perhaps a nightcap. Stagger out into the misty dawn. This is where I long to be. This is what I dream. I'm gonna be a jester, blowing some saxophone, grooving hard in some neon-lit bar, ain't never thinking of home. Gonna be a jester, flying high. ginger curls unfurling. No greater life could ever be as full. This is where